So, hello everyone. First thing I'm going to say is I'm very nervous. And behind me here, these images are going to rotate and they'll give you a little flavour of our event. And the reason I'm using this is because I don't know how to do PowerPoint or anything like that. I can't even turn a computer on. And the other reason why I'm using it is because I'm hoping you'll all keep looking at that and don't look at me. But on a serious note, we were absolutely delighted to reach the shortlist level during Heritage Week. And to get that national recognition, it's absolutely huge for us. And I just want to give you a little flavour. I'm just going to talk about our event. You'll have to decide if there's anything in our story that's relevant to you. But for us, it has been a huge thing to get this far. So I'm going to say a little bit about our group and where we come from, and then I'm just going to describe our event, and you look at the images, okay? So the Glenmalure Pure Mile group is a group of 10 neighbours who live along the last 4 miles in the Glenmalure Valley in County Wicklow. And there are 7 houses along that 4-mile stretch. And the 10 of us come from those 7 houses. And we came together in 2014. We're always coming together, but we came together, we can't miss each other. But we came together in 2014 to form a community group, and in an effort to clean up the valley, number one, and then to preserve and protect the heritage that is part of that valley, including the natural heritage itself. So along with the stunning natural beauty, she says, with no bias at all, in the Glenmalure Valley, we have a very rich social and military heritage. And we also have an industrial mining heritage. So the military heritage is very well known. 1798, the rebels, the mountains, the songs, it's all very well known. But the mining heritage is really not well known. So just briefly, between 1800 and 1900, there were several lead mines in operation along that 4-mile stretch in Glenmalure. And in addition to the mine buildings themselves, there were between 20 and 30 cottages that housed the miners and their families. There was a mine manager's house, there was a shop, there was a forge, and there was a school. And the school was built by the miners themselves for their children. And the school operated 2 shifts. The early shift, half the kids went to school and the other half worked on the mines. And then in the later shift, the kids came off the mines, went to school, and the kids left the school and worked on the mines. And in addition to that, actually, local lore tells us, there's not official lore, but local lore tells us there was also a shebeen. And Liam, we had our own brothel as well. We don't publicise that, that's just between you and me, okay? But all of those sites that I've just mentioned are still clearly identifiable, but with only scanned remains, except for the more substantial ruins of 2 mine crusher buildings that exist at the very, very end of the valley where the road ends and the next step is up into the hills. And there's these 2 ruins standing there in the forest. And they're the last visible remnants of that whole mining heritage that existed in the valley. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But for our heritage event itself, it was a mining heritage hill walk. And for that event, we collaborated with another group, a group called the Glens of Lead group, which are based in Glendalough, which is our neighbouring valley. You just go over the mountain and down into Glendalough. And they're a group of volunteers in Glendalough, and they're committed to preserving and promoting the mining heritage across those Wicklow mountains. So we linked up with the Glens of Lead group and we worked together on this event. So our event was an 8-hour, 20-kilometre hill walk, traversing the 3 valleys of Glendassan, Glendalough and Glenmalure, linking up 6 mine sites along the way. The purpose of our event was to inform people about the mining heritage in these 3 valleys and to correct misunderstandings and misinformation concerning the mine sites and the surrounding buildings and ruins. For example, in Glendalough, you know, everybody knows the reference to the miners' village. And there's a common misunderstanding that the miners' village in Glendalough are the cottages where the miners lived. And the miners in Glendalough didn't live around the mine site. They lived outside and they came in and out. All those ruins in Glendalough are actually mine buildings themselves, where the work itself was carried out. In our own valley in Glendalough, those 2 mine crusher buildings that are left down standing at the end of the valley, most people assume that they are from the military heritage. And people refer to them as, oh yeah, the soldiers' billets or the barracks. But actually they're from the mining heritage, and it's just not known about. So a very particular objective of this event was to highlight and to celebrate the recent conservation work we got carried out on one of those crusher house buildings, where we've had it made safe and beautifully conserved with specialist work, that it's not going to fall down, and it's going to last for at least another 100 years, hopefully, if not longer. So, and in addition to that, the miners' trail that led up to that crusher house was restored as well. So we have a restored trail, miners' trail, leading up to the crusher house, and it creates a little 3-kilometre mining heritage trail. And that work was done between 2016 and 2017. So we wanted to celebrate that as well. So our walk ended at that point to highlight that. The walk itself, it started at the Hero Mines in the Glendassan Valley, up at the Wicklow Gap. We skirted around Camadary Mountain and descended into Glendalough. And then we continued on up over the Spink, and eventually we joined a short section of the Wicklow Way, and then we picked up an old miners' track that dropped us down into the Glenmalure Valley. And that was roughly the 3 valleys walk. We had 3 speakers to tell us the story of these places. Our first speaker was a man called Robby Carter. Now, Robby is a former miner himself on the Glendassan mine site. And Robby gave us a first-hand account of what it was actually like working underground. And he spoke very poignantly. He spoke very poignantly about an explosion in which he himself was seriously injured, and in which his close friend and workmate lost his life. And, you know, Robby's really personal sharing of his story at the mine site itself, at the adit that was the entrance in where they would have gone, it really created a very human context for us, for all the information that we were going to see throughout the day. This was about real people and real men, and Robby gave us that. Robby's in his 80s now, and his personal kind of mission has been to use his life to remember and to, you know, tell people about these miners, and particularly to tell people about the man who died only feet away from him underground, James Myrna, a young man at the time. And so last night, actually, coincidentally, in our local hotel, the Glenmalure Lodge, we had a little function to celebrate our shortlisting and to honour Robby, really, because he kind of was the main man on this event. And he has agreed to, we presented him with our little piece of Jerpoint glass, and he's agreed to hold that for us in safekeeping. So that was just last night. And then the second person, Dave Shepard. Dave is a mining expert based in Glendalough. He spoke about the mine sites in that valley, and he really made the more technical aspects of the work very accessible and very interesting to lay people like the rest of us, most of us were. And Dave is a member of the Glens of Lead group. And the third speaker was Carmel O'Toole, and Carmel's a native of Glenmalure. She's our local historian. She spoke about the mine sites in Glenmalure with particular emphasis on the social and the industrial aspects of the history. And really, you know, Carmel's intimate knowledge and her deep feeling for the heritage of her home place kept us all fully engaged and fully motivated and involved right up to the last stages of this really, you know, epic trek. So, and we're blessed to have Carmel as a member of our Pure Mile group as well. So the walk itself then was charted, managed and led by Charles Auburn. He's a professional mountain guide who lives in Glenmalure. He's also a member of the Pure Mile group. And he was very well supported by a colleague who's also a trained mountain leader, by a neighbour who's a member of Mountain Rescue, and by the rest of us in the Pure Mile group. With regard to the weather, we experienced all 4 seasons on that day. But it really didn't deter. People didn't lose any enjoyment from that. And the feedback we got was that from start to finish, they found it an informative and an interesting day, a great mountain experience, and they just loved the scenery. We got very widespread encouragement regarding our plan to make this an annual Heritage Week event, and hopefully in the near future to get this trail, this 20-kilometre trail over the 3 valleys, established as a waymarked mining heritage trail. And we're already engaged in meetings with various bodies. That's already kind of moving. So we're very excited about that. What worked well for us with that event was the organic nature of the event, in that it grew naturally from all the heritage work we've been doing in the valley over the last 3 or 4 years. It was a natural next step for us to link the mining heritage in Glenmalure with the mining heritage in our neighbouring valleys of Glendalough and Glendassan. It's not a one-off event. It's part of a long-term plan for developing the valley. We started with a 1-year plan. It seemed to morph into a 3-year plan, and now it's morphing into a 10-year plan. We have a mission statement. We don't want to alter the natural landscape. We don't want to change it in any way. And we don't want to increase the footfall on these hills. We have to be very careful about conserving the mountains themselves. And we're a tiny little cul-de-sac of a valley. We get a lot of visitors anyway. It's a hill walking paradise. And most of the people who come to Glenmalure, and we get lots of visitors all year round from Ireland and from abroad, they're mainly hill walkers. We get day trippers on Sunday afternoons, Saturday afternoons, and during the summer. What we want to do is encourage the people who come to really adopt a kind of a caretaker approach, that when they're there in our valley, they're caretakers. And there's people who live in the valley, and there's people who've lived in the valley for centuries. And we're trying to cultivate that awareness by really doing it ourselves. That's really what our mission statement is. The whole event in Heritage Week emerged out of all of that. Another thing that worked well for us was that the event we ran suited our skill set and our resources. We had all of those people in our groups, in our valley. We had the mountains. The heritage was there. We had the people who knew about it, and it suited us. So in fact, it felt very natural for us to do that particular event. So we weren't trying to do anything we couldn't do. Also what helped was the good relationships we've built up with relevant groups and agencies through all our other work in the last few years that would have been relevant in this event. So Coillte is the main landowner. We've built up a very good relationship with them. The Wicklow Upland Council would have an interest in what we're doing. The Heritage Council, of course. The National Parks and Wildlife Services. The Mining Heritage Trust of Ireland. Wicklow County Council. There's lots of organisations there, and we have built up great relationships with them, and they all supported us in doing this event and are encouraging us to continue in our efforts. So liaising with those relevant bodies we have found crucial, and building up a really good collaborative relationship. On that note, I did want to just mention I was delighted today, it was unexpected, but I was delighted today to meet Josephine Auburn from another volunteer group called the Friends of Glenmalure. And Josephine and her friends in that group are a volunteer group from Anoiga who are committed to keeping the Anoiga hostel in Glenmalure alive and kicking and running. And that hostel is at the very, very end of our valley. It's on our new little heritage looped trail. It's really steeped in history. W.B. Yeats hung out there, Maud Gon McBride hung out there, Dr. Kathleen Lynn hung out there, John Millington Synge hung out there, based one of his plays on the valley, The Shadow of the Glen. It's steeped in history, it has no running water, it has no electricity. It's very much as it might have been when Yeats and Maud Gon were doing whatever they did there. But Josephine and this little group of people are keeping that alive. They had 1,000 bed nights last week. 1,000 people stayed overnight in that little place, in that remote part of the valley. No running water, no electricity. We've a great relationship with them. So when we run our events down there, they always open the hostel to us, and we get to offer tea and coffee and homemade scones and brown bread to the people who come on our events. And we really value the relationship. So this is really the heart of it. This is what it's about. A couple of other practical things that helped for this particular event. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but limiting the number of people who came on that was important. The ideal number was 25 to 30 people. It was a long walk. It was rated moderate to challenging. We had speakers every few kilometres. We had a talk out on the open hillside in all the weathers. We couldn't have really managed a group more than 30 people. We ended up with 28 on the day, and it worked out perfect. So in terms of promoting the heritage, it had a limited outreach, but it's not a one-off event. Our work is long term, so we're hoping we're already planning this year's one, and so to make it an annual event, to get it established as a waymarked way, it's the long-term view in terms of promoting and outreach that we're looking at. Other practical things that helped, people had to register by email in advance, so we knew exactly who we had and who was registered for the walk. We gave very clear information about the demands of the hill walk and the kind of hill walking equipment that people needed. And it worked. It worked in that everybody who turned up was fully equipped. They knew they were able for that level of challenge, and we had no incidents, thank God, on the day, and everybody was able to enjoy it. So that giving that kind of very important information really worked for us. We had insurance, even though we had insurance for that event, we also asked people to sign a register at the beginning of the walk when we met at the assembly point, which contained a statement that they undertook to take the walk at their own risk. And everybody was more than happy to do that. And it even generated a kind of spontaneous discussion about personal responsibility out on the hills. And we found that a really positive, it just set the tone, it gelled us as a group. People look after themselves, they looked after each other, And that note of taking personal responsibility, we felt worked very well. It's something we will continue to do with all our events. At the end of the walk, each person was given 4 information leaflets, which included maps and a certificate of participation. And they seemed to appreciate it. There was a great buzz, a sense of achievement, and they seemed to, a little bit like children in school getting a prize. It was valued. And those 4 leaflets would have been leaflets we would have, the Pure Mile group would have prepared over the last few years, and the Glens of Lead group would have prepared. So we had one of those for everybody, and that was very appreciated. There was no charge for the walk. Everybody who contributed or facilitated on the day volunteered their services. There was a €5 charge for the bus journey from our meeting point to the start of the walk. Our meeting point was actually the end point of the walk, so everybody could just kind of roll into their cars when they came back. And we got a bus to bring us to the start. That worked very well. And we had good parking. We had good parking facilities at the end there as well. So the only charge was the €5 for the coach. What was really important, and we got very specific feedback about this, what helped a lot was our own passion and enthusiasm. We love our valley. We love the mountain ranges. We love what we do. We're all hill walkers. We're just passionate about it, and we were just having a good time. And that really contributed, and it generated an energy for the group, and they fed off that. In fact, they said it was kind of contagious. So that would seem to be a really important ingredient. The other last thing that we felt really helped was the variety that we built into the event. So having 3 speakers, 3 different speakers with 3 different slants on the heritage theme. Having a regular interchange between walking, talking and snack breaks. Never walking for too long, never talking for too long. The variety of terrain and scenery really helped as well. And interestingly, we ended up having a variety of participants. So we had some locals, we had a historian, we had a couple of geologists, we had students, we had ordinary hill walkers, we had people from Mountaineering Ireland. And we invited people who had any knowledge or anything to contribute themselves to do so. So there was a lovely flow of information over and back, a lovely involvement. And they did. Anybody who had anything to contribute, they did. And that really created a lovely collaborative feel to the event. We took a mixed approach to our advertising as well. So we did Facebook. We got some younger people in our Facebook who know how to manage these things to do Facebook for us. We used posters in the local hotel, in the post office, in the shops. We used the local newspapers, the local radio station. We used word of mouth. They're great talkers down there, County Wicklow, so you just have to start talking to your neighbours and it all just goes out. And the Heritage Council booklet and website. And as far as we can make out, we got a few people through each of those channels. So that seemed to help as well. Niamh suggested we might say what we would do differently. And I don't know if this is a good thing, but we actually talked about this because we had a meeting there recently, and there's really very little that we would do differently. We kind of felt it worked, and we're kind of not going to tamper with it. Now, that hasn't been the same with all our events, that we're lucky with that particular one. You know, on the 6th of January, we ran an event up at the Crusher House as well. It was a candlelit walk, memorial walk to remember the miners. And we were starting at 4 o'clock to walk into the dark. And we had 700 little night lights in 700 jam jars all along our little 3-kilometre heritage trail. And we had the cakes and the sandwiches all stocked up in the hostel, and Josephine had the water boiling for us for when we got back. And we were starting at 4, and at 3:30, a thick mist just kind of descended down, as it does, as we should have known, living there. And we could not keep our candles lit, basically. But we did it anyway. and there were an odd little candle here or there, and we did it anyway. And that's the thing, you just do it anyway. And we were kind of having such a good time anyway that everyone had a good time, and it worked. But all I want to say is, like, things don't work exactly to plan all the time. Don't worry, it doesn't really matter. I don't know if what we did and what worked for us is transferable to other events, but if we were asked for advice, this is what we might say. We might say, choose an event that suits your skill set and the resources of your group. Know what you want to achieve from your event. Keep it simple. Collaborate with other groups or individuals where possible. Involve people. Don't alienate them. And if you don't love it, don't do it. And that's not kind of a fuzzy, wuzzy kind of piece of advice. It's very practical. Your love for what you do gets you over the glitches and the humps along the way. You know, we're a motley little group of people, the 10 of us. And, you know, we all have personalities. And sometimes they kind of clash, and we get things wrong and things don't work out, or someone forgets to send an email, or someone didn't put up the poster or whatever. And we have found that the fact that we just love the valley and we love what we're doing, that our relationship with the place where we live is bigger than everything else we're doing. And that's what matters. And we just keep coming back to that. And we can say 100% it works. It absolutely works. So do whatever it is that you love doing. To finish, there are 2 projects that the group really wanted me to acknowledge here today, that we've been involved in, that have played a big part in our journey. Our journey to getting national recognition, you know, for what we're doing in this tiny little cul-de-sac in the mountains. The first project is the Pure Mile project, based in County Wicklow. It's run by Ian Davis. And PURE stands for Protecting Upland Rural Environments. Its focus is on litter and dumping and heritage, preserving and promoting heritage. And we've been involved with that since 2015. We've had great success in it. We were Pure Mile winners in 2015 and 2016, and we got a special award called Winning Back Our Valley Award in 2017. But the support and motivation we have got from being part of that scheme, and from Ian himself, he's very available, has really helped to bring us. It's the backbone of us, and that's why we are still, and we will always be, the Pure Mile group, because it's the backbone of what we do. The second project that was very significant for us was the Heritage Council's Adopt a Monument scheme, which was run by Roisin Burke, is run by Roisin Burke and Neil Jackman. And that came on stream in 2016. They took us on board, and we got our conservation work done on our crusher house and our little trail restoration done largely through our involvement with that project. We've got immense support and guidance from Roisin Burke and Neil Jackman. And all of that has contributed to, you know, standing here today, because we got shortlisted in this national award, which, you know, we're really, really chuffed about. And finally, I was told to say this, and I want to say it. For the phenomenon that is Heritage Week itself, we really want to thank Niamh Donnellan. Big time. Thank you.